Hey guys, my name is Zach, and as you can see, this topic that I'm going to present to you today is on the Constitution of Pakistan, the original that was drafted and signed into law in the year 1956. So, briefly, I'm going to try and share with you as much information as I can about it. So, in order to begin, it's a good idea to start from the partition of India in the year 1947. We all should hopefully know about that pretty well at this point, but just a quick recap. In the year 1947, the partition of India took place with the goal of creating a separate nation for Muslims. This nation is Pakistan. And so the partition of India was meant to, I guess, grant independence from Great Britain. But something to keep in mind is, yes, that was the goal, but independence didn't exactly occur immediately from the get-go. And I'll explain what I mean in just a second. So the first adopted constitution of Pakistan didn't exist until the year 1956, even though we know that Pakistan was created in 1947. So this means that for 9 years, Pakistan existed as an independent nation without having their own constitution. And how does that work? Well, like I said, I'm going to explain to you why. So what I mean by saying that Pakistan wasn't, I guess, fully independent from the get-go is it was a British Dominion starting in 1947. So a British Dominion is a commonwealth of Great Britain that is still partially governed under British rule. Dun, dun, dun. So it wasn't quite independent from the get-go. And this, I guess, Dominion status was sort of necessary as Pakistan was, trying to draft their constitution, figure out how they wanted to organize their government. And for them, it took them just 9 years to do so. And I included this sweet little illustration here. It's, a world map that shows highlighted in red the separate dominions that were dominions of Great Britain. These included Canada and Australia, and we're probably familiar with that, probably South Africa, but it included other countries in Africa, including Egypt. And if we look over by India, we can see that it included India and Pakistan. So, um, so Pakistan was just this little British dominion until Pakistan became officially known as an Islamic republic as soon as their first constitution was drafted in 1956. So that begs the question, why did it take 9 years to draft a constitution? Well, as far as I was able to research, it just took some time to organize their government and to come up with a constitution that everyone could agree upon, as there were minority parties, such as the area that became Bangladesh. There were these minority parties that couldn't agree upon certain laws and certain, I guess, articles of the Constitution for quite a while until the year 1956. So, quick fun fact, um, I just want to draw a quick parallel to the United States. The United States gained independence on July 4th, 1776. That's our Independence Day, of course. And the Constitution of the United States was adopted on March 4th, 1789. So the United States, our own country, or at least the country that I live in, is it too went a while without having its own constitution. So it's not like Pakistan, wasn't didn't know necessarily what they were doing. It's just it's a process, kind of like how it was with the United States. So, if I could, I would include the Constitution of Pakistan in this presentation. But as you can see right here near the top, there are 234 different articles divided into 13 parts. So obviously that would be kind of ridiculous to include in this presentation. But just to point out a few things that I guess draw parallels between Pakistan and the United States. One thing I see is equal seats for East and West Pakistan in the Legislative Assembly. Now, you can kind of think of that as, I guess, equal representation in the United States Senate, where there are two elected representatives from each state. in the U.S. Senate. That's kind of similar. Um, Two-thirds majority required to pass any bill and amend the Constitution. Now, I'm trying to dust off my American foundations knowledge, but if I'm not mistaken, that's the exact same, I guess, method for the for amendment of the U.S. Constitution is it requires a two-thirds vote. Um, let's see, president to be a Muslim. I mean, that's not the same here in the United States, but you could think of it as the U.S. president is required to be born in the United States. Um, so that's somewhat similar there. And parliamentary republican nature. This is the last one here. It's the U.S. government isn't a parliament, but it is a constitutional republic by definition. So Pakistan does have a president, but it also has a prime minister, kind of like Great Britain. Alrighty. Unfortunately, the original Constitution of Pakistan didn't last very long. It was written into law in the year 1956, and by the year 1958, it was basically gone and obsolete. That's because the president of Pakistan, Iskander Misra, I'm sorry if I butchered that pronunciation, he abrogated the Constitution only 2 years after its adoption. So President Iskander Misra was a military leader who then became president of Pakistan. So he was like kind of like a general in the army, um, and this kind of led way to these military coups or coups, however you pronounce that word. Anyway, basically, um, military rule then took over, and these time periods of military rule included, between the years 1958 and 1971, 1977 to 1988, and up until recently from 1999 to 2008. Now, these military rules were, I guess, when martial law was declared, when the military ruled and did everything, and these essentially were just like brutal regimes where the military president was essentially kind of like, I guess you could think of him as like a dictator. And so that was no bueno. They like to suspend the constitution that was in place at the time or just throw it away altogether. And so as soon as these militant coups were in power, then they essentially just disregarded their constitutional law and essentially did whatever they felt like. So that leads us to the Pakistani Constitution today, and we know that in the year 2008 was the electoral defeat of the most recent military coup, and a civilian president again was elected, and the Constitution, the later one, was again in effect. So now things as far as the political climate in Pakistan are somewhat looking up. But anyway, that I've gone over my time, so I'm just going to conclude my presentation. Thank you guys for listening, and I hope you learned a thing or two from me. Appreciate it.